Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. So as promised, today I'll be making a video and a tutorial about installing an inverter on the RAV4 Prime. So today we're going to be using a 1200 watts inverter, which I'll be plugging it to the 12 volt battery. So the setup will be a little complicated. I haven't seen this online or anyone do this. So let's get to it. So before starting the installation, I just want to explain a little bit why I'm doing this. So an inverter is pretty much converting your DC electricity, so that means electricity coming from your battery, into AC electricity that you can plug in, household appliances. So let's say, you have a power outage, or let's say you're going camping and you want to plug in, let's say, I don't know, a microwave or a water boiler, anything you want. Well, this is a perfect example on how you can use it. But you do have to be careful on the amount of wattage you're actually using, how many watts the system can take. So for the RAV4 Prime, you're getting around 150 amperes from the DC to DC converter to the battery. So you don't want to go over 1500 amps. 1500 watts. But even then, 1500 watts is quite a lot, because in case you might be using other systems, you might be going over that 150 amperes. So in my case, I'm putting a 1200 watts inverter, but nowhere I'm going to be using 1200. I'll be plugging most probably something for under 800 watts. So that's something to be mindful about when you're doing the installation. And also, the setup requires, big gauges. The cables should be big enough for it to support the actual amount of electricity, the amperes. So I'm going to show you a little bit what I have for the setup. So for my setup, I have the inverter here, which is the Giandel. So I don't know how to say this. So that's the inverter I got on Amazon. So as you can see, is a 1200 watts continuous power. And the surge is pretty much the peak power, 2400. But what you have to look at is this one, which is the continuous power that we'll be providing. So you have the terminals here, positive and negative, and you have a fan. And if I switch this to the other side, you have the ground here. So this is where you're going to be grounding this to the chassis of the vehicle. Then you have two AC plugs here. You have a monitor here. LED, which is going to tell you a little bit how much watts or voltage you're using, USB, and also remote control. So this is a remote control that you can plug in, which is right here. It'll let you actually turn on or off the power according to, instead of actually going to the power button here, you can put this outside so you don't have to have access to this to turn it on. I'll be doing a different install. I'm not going to be using these. I will be using something similar to this, so I can mount this outside in the hatch area in the back. So I'll be plugging this to this and leaving this exposed outside. I ordered another one, which I'll be posting later, but it's going to be with the one plug and I believe 2 USB. So to do this setup, I received these cables here, which are 5 gauge cables, which are not enough for the setup I want to do. So instead I decided to go with the 4 gauge cable here. So I just want to thank Yannick and Paul in our Facebook group. They actually, helping me a lot with this setup, and they suggested me all these stuff here. So I'm going with their advice. So 4 gauge cable. So I bought this on Amazon, which is a 15 feet cable, which is way too much. I might need just maybe 5 feet for each. So I'm using the same one for positive and negative. So I'm going to cut it. And how I'm going to differentiate is with the shrinking tube here, which I'll tell you after why I'm using this. So since I have to build my own cable here, I had to find what the terminal sizes are for this. So for here, the terminal size, it is a 5/16. So that's the 5/16 terminal. So I ended up getting these ones here. So 4 gauge 5/16 rings that I'll be putting on one side. So the side that's gonna go on the inverter. And on the battery side, I ended up getting lugs terminal that is, I don't know if you can zoom there. So these are 3/8. So 3/8 will fit on the RAV4 Prime terminals. So those will go on the other side of the cable. And you have a fuse here. So I'm going to be putting 125 amperes on the as a fuse between the terminal from the battery to the terminal here. So I'm going to put this in between just in case, you know, it goes over 125, this will trip. So as you can see, this means the circuit is closed, and this one, it will trip if it goes over 125 amps. Next, we have the crimping tool. So this is, someone lent it to me. Very nice of them. So, so this is what you're gonna use to crimp these lugs to the cable here. And you need it to be a pretty good crimp, or else it's not just gonna come off, and you're gonna use efficiency if you don't do this properly. So I suggest, you know, you guys get this, or there's also the hydraulic ones that Paul mentioned. Really good one from what I see from the reviews. So I'll put the link in the description as well. And to cut the cable, well, to cut the cable, you need something like this. So these are heavy gauge or heavy duty cable cutters. If you don't have this, it's going to be really hard to have a clean cut for your 4 gauge cables. So I suggest you get this. I tried renting these, but you know, I couldn't really find places. These go for $29 at Home Depot. And finally, you have these ring terminals that I'll be using for this small cable here, which is a 14 gauge. You can even do 12 gauge, 10 gauge, but you know, the instruction manual for this suggested me 12 gauge for the grounding. 14 gauge actually for the grounding. So I went with the 14 gauge here with a 14 gauge terminal. Why do I have two? Well, one, I think it's the number 10. It's going to be for this side. Sorry guys, just keep switching. So this one here. So these terminals will fit in here, but I knew the other side will go on the car's body. And I'm pretty sure it's going to be a big one. So I ended up getting 5/16 on this, so I can put this on the car's ground. And finally, the shrinking tube here. So these tubes is actually when you're going to be putting these here, well, you have to cut this, put this here, and then crimp it. You want something like this. As you can see here, you have shrinking tube here. So you have different types you want to get. So for the 4 gauge, I ended up getting a 3/8, which is the perfect size here. Some people even go with the half inch or even 3/4, depending on your thickness of the actual cover here. So the thickness of the wire itself, the inside, is usually the same for 4 gauge, but sometimes the outside cover is a little thicker depending on the type of cable you're getting. So mine, I ended up getting a 3/8. And since I'm using the same color cable, I'm going to be using different colors for the positive and negative terminal. So as I'm going to use the red tube here on the edge here to identify the red terminal, the positive ones. And finally, I do have some tubing here. So I'm going to do a clean installation. So I want to pass both of my 4 gauge and the ground wires in these tubes, so it can be a clean setup. All right, so let's get to it. So I have to build some wires, and then I'm going to show you a little bit the setup I want to do and where I found a location for this inverter. So the best place I found location for my inverter is right here. So as you can see, you have your tools to replace your spare tire in case of emergency. You have a few tools here. So what I did is they have screws here, so you just remove 2 screws and this thing just comes off. So obviously I don't need all this big support to have these tools. I'm just going to keep them in the trunk. You know, I do have a storage bag, so I'll still keep these in the car, but you know, I don't need all this support to keep them. So that actually gives you a lot of space here. So I know it's a little dirty here. So it gives you a lot of space here. And what I realize is this thing just fits perfectly. And what's good is the top carpet goes right on top of this and it doesn't get blocked. And I know a lot of people, folks, I received a lot of comments about the fact that this will overheat when I turn it on because it needs a lot of space to actually breathe, and also to dissipate the heat, because the body itself is also a heat sink, right? So it produces heat because this will be working. But I also found that yes, it has a fan. That's one of the things. So it's going to cool down. I'm not going to use this inverter while it's completely blocked off. Obviously I'm going to open this if I want to use it. And what I realize is this part also comes off. So you just remove this, and voila. So you have a lot of access for air to actually go in. And if I want to, and I'm actually looking into it, since you have a USB port on this, so you might as well just put a fan here. So with the fan, what you can do is bring in fresh air, so cool air into this, and cool the system out. And if you want, you can do a dual system. So bring in some fresh air, and then in another way, exhaust the hot air from the actual compartment. So that's a possibility. Or what you do is just open this up while you're using it, and you're good to go. So the installation will happen this way. So inverter here. I'm almost done building my cables. As you can see, I already have the positive terminal here, which is the 516 ring here. The plug will come here, the one I showed you. So what we're going to do is we're going to open this up. As you can see, this side, I have the XSE model. We only have the 12 volt here, cigarette lighter. I'm going to be installing the plug here. There's different ways of doing it. You can just leave it here, and you can plug here if you want, or you can even switch this on the other side. I want to make it a little cleaner. I want to put an extension here that runs all the way here, and this is where my plug will be. It'll be accessible all the time. So this one, very easy. You just have to put a pry tool. Once you have it, comes up very easily, and here you go. That's what it is. Make sure you don't damage any of this, and you have a lot of space here if you want to put anything. So this is where I'll be drilling a hole, and also putting the on-off button here, or maybe here. We'll see. And as for the battery, as you can see, I started wiring a little bit, so I only did one side. So I have to do the battery side here, which is a 3/8 ring terminal. And the battery, I'm going to pass it through here, and this is where the battery is. So just open this, pull here, voila, you have access to the battery. So I'll be passing this cable here, so two of these underneath here, and it should technically come off this side, which it should be, but it's going up. So either way, I'll be passing it through here, and then going to the negative terminal, positive terminal, and I have to find a spot for the ground as well. So I don't see any screws here for the ground. Yeah, so I can maybe ground it to the chassis here somewhere, or if I wanted to, there's a spot here possibly. If not, there's also some space here in the back that you can ground your ground wire here. All right, so let's get to that. So the setup is done. So I ended up removing the spare tire from here because it was much easier to work without that tire. So let me walk you through the installation. So on the battery side here, so I had to build both cables, so the positive and the negative cables. For the positive, there's two sections. So one from the battery terminal to the fuse, and then after from the fuse you need another set of cable that goes to the inverter. So you want the fuse to be as close to the battery as possible. I managed to do it as much as I could. Initially my first setup was 22 inches from, and the fuse was coming here. And then I got advice from Paul saying, hey, should get it closer to the battery as possible. So I ended up shortening this. So I believe I'm at 7 inches now from the battery. From the terminal to the fuse is currently on. So if it trips, usually you push this and this twists. So let me just show you this. There you go. So when it trips, and then you can put it back. There you go. So this, I brought it right under here, same place where my, if you guys haven't watched my other video, is I put a charger here, so a permanent installation for a battery charger in case I ever need to charge a 12-volt battery. So I'll post a link for that video as well. So these are also connected to the battery terminals. So I pass it through the same spot there, goes all the way till here, the inverter terminal here. And same thing for the negative pole as well. So the negative terminal goes all the way to the battery. This one doesn't need a fuse, obviously. But this one I passed it right under here where this cable goes for my hitch harness, actually, that was installed by Toyota. So I passed it through the same spot here and put it to the battery terminal there. So as for the ground, I didn't find any good spots for the ground. I saw there's spots here for screws, but I didn't have anything that fit on that size. So what I ended up doing is I built my own. I took a 14 gauge cable, put in the terminals here. So the terminal size here, I believe, is I think a number 10 on this. And this one I ended up doing another one, which is 5/16. And there was nothing here, so I ended up putting my own screw and nut here. And I don't know if you can see it here. I attached it here because the spare tire is gonna come on top of this, so I don't want it to crush the wires. And last setup is the remote control here. I just plugged it for now. In my final setup, it's gonna be here. So what I'm gonna be doing, this part here, I'll be putting a switch, so an AC switch here with 2 USB and also a power on off switch for the inverter. So let me show you how it works. So currently it is on. The car is in ready mode. That's really important, guys. Don't do this if your car is not in ready mode. It's gonna deplete your battery in a matter of seconds or even minutes. So remote control, so I did it from the actual casing. So the casing that comes with it is this. It's not good looking, so this is gonna be garbage. So I'll be finding a nicer button for this. But yeah, you have to long press it. It is on, and as you can see, I plugged a work light on this. And on this side, I'm gonna try to zoom in here. You can see you're getting 14.2 volt input, and we're using 40 watts on this because this working light is, I think, 40 or 50 watts. And you also have the option of adding a USB here, like I mentioned before. If you want to put a fan or any other accessory, that's a possibility as well. So now I should be getting the other part here for the AC plug and the USB, and I'll try to find a better button for this so I can finish the setup. And I will be drilling through this, so that's another setup I want to do, because I don't want to just leave this hanging or the AC plug hanging. So I'll be drilling through this. So I ended up receiving the plug I wanted. So it's a single plug here with 2 USBs, and in the back you have these little groove here. I believe they're called grommet switches because it comes with a little twist in the back. And yeah, and I ended up taking this part here from the car. So I'm just going to show you where I took this. So it is right here. So this part goes here. So that's where my switch will be. So I ended up drilling a 2-inch hole here with this little bad boy here. So I had a little old set here that I borrowed from the in-laws. And yeah, so this is a 2-inch drilled here, and this will go right through here and this cable here, and this cable will be plugged to the inverter, so I'll always have access to the plug here. I also need to do my other setup, which is the little button here, which is going to be the on-off button here. So here, on and off. But I still haven't found a good button for this, or a cover, and how I'm going to put this in here. But that's going to be my next step after this. So let's get this one set up first. So this is what it looks like. As you can see, very nice fit. The only issue I had is this part here. So since these clip actually go into the car, this whole, the lock mechanism in the back of this plug was too big to actually let this slide in properly. So I had to cut a little piece here. So advice for anyone doing this, if you're doing a 2-inch hole, just do it in the middle here. So if you're not putting anything in here, just do the hole in the middle, so you're not going to have this issue here. And I'm going to show you why. So this is the issue here. So this part here will block you for you to actually put it inside. So hence why you see I had to cut just a little bit to make it go inside. So, and you want this lock to be in the back because it's not going to move when you're actually, using this plug. So you want it to be really, really tight. So let's just try this out. I'm going to try to do this one hand. There you go. Yeah, that's it. So you have a working plug here. Well, I do have to connect it. So the next step is bringing that plug all the way here. By the way, the inverter is working right now for my lights. And yeah, so that's going to be my setup here. So plug here, USB, and possibly the remote control to turn on, not the remote control, a little button to turn on and off the inverter, because this will be covered. Unless I'm using it with extensive power, then in that case I'll be opening it because this will overheat, obviously. But let's say I'm using, like, let's say a working light. Obviously 40 watts is not gonna make this overpower. So in that case I can just use the power button here and just plug regular stuff. Alright, so now I'm gonna try to pass a fishing line here and see if it comes out through here to pass that wire. So there's no chance you can fish the wire through here because there's the body here. So what I ended up doing is removing, there was a screw here, right here, and lifted this up, and you have the same screw here on this side, so you don't put the pressure here. So I just lifted this up, and I found out that the body here is connected to here. So let me just go inside. So what I did is I used a 5 gauge wire, which is a little thick, but it worked out because I didn't want to damage anything inside because it was very soft. So I wanted something that was soft here, not to damage the protection here. And I managed to pass the wire. As you can see, the red wire is coming here now. So I put some electric tape on my switch here. Should be good enough, should hold. I'm just gonna slowly pull it to bring it out here and eventually plug it to here. Alright, so I'm gonna do this off camera. So I managed to pass the cable from here all the way there, and what I did is there's a little hole right here behind this where I managed to pass the wire, and it's coming from here. And all the excess wire, I put some tie wrap here and I left it right under here, which is empty. And this is connected to the inverter right now. So technically this should work. So let's just plug this in. Yeah, So we have electricity. Here you go. So this is the setup as of now, with two USBs and the power plug here. Now I'm gonna see where I can find a spot for the remote control, and yeah, so that's gonna be my next step. So for the remote control, I think I'm gonna keep this one for now. I'm just waiting on another setup to add it here. So this one I'm just gonna tuck in here. As you can see, I can just long press this. The inverter turns on, and then if I press it again, turns off. So I'm gonna keep this here for now. I'm gonna make another video on this when I'm gonna have a better setup for the power, like I mentioned here with the switch. And for now, I also did all the tubing here to protect the wires a little bit. So I did it for the positive and the negative terminals here. So I just passed them here. I'm gonna put a little tape here just to attach them to the body. And I passed it all the way through here, and same thing here. And that's it for my setup. So as you can see, this works now. Let me just turn it on. There you go. I can plug in a cell phone. I can plug in anything I want here. Let me just get the working light right here. And yeah, that's it. So let me just put everything back together, and I'll show you the final result. Alright guys, the setup is done, so let's actually test the inverter. So to do my test, I have some great bagels from Inverter Bagel here. So let's use the toaster oven here. Sorry, the toaster. So this toaster is rated for 750 watts. Which is well below the inverter's 1200 watts. So let's test that out. So the bagel's already cut. So really important before you start using the inverter is turn on your car and put it in ready mode. If you do not do that, your battery will die, your 12 volt battery. So that's really important in any installation on the inverters, that your car should be running. So for the RAV4 Prime, how to do that is you go in here, press the brake pedals, and just start the car. And if you could see here, ready mode. So once you're in ready mode, you're good to go. So now we are gonna go here. So I left the remote here. So guys, this is gonna be another video where I'm gonna do a different setup. I'm gonna bring this this button here all the way here, like I mentioned. So in this case, I just have to long press it. It is on, and you have the toaster that's plugged in. So let's just put this here, and let's see if it's gonna work. And as you can see, the inverter is already running, so it's taking a lot of power. So preferably in this case, you would want to open this up so the air can go in. But as you can see, the car didn't blow up, and it is working, and I'm gonna have some fresh bagels here. So whoever's living in Quebec or Montreal, Inverter Bagel, they're the best, so go for that. That's it folks, I hope you liked the video. If you did, don't forget to like, subscribe, and also click the notification button if you want to be notified for any other alerts. So make sure you actually respect the wattage on your inverter if you actually want to do the installation. But not only on the inverter itself, respect the wattage on your car's capacity. So this is specifically for the RAV4 Prime 2021. So like I mentioned, I wouldn't go anywhere over 1200 watts on this, or else the system is pretty fragile. Like I said, there's only 150 amps coming from the DC to DC converter to the battery. So be mindful of that. So for me, until then, I'm gonna enjoy some good bagels here. So everything worked perfectly for the toaster here. If you have any comments or suggestions for any other videos I should be doing, please write them in the comment section below. And I also have a part 2 coming for the button here that I want to put right here. So that's gonna be another day. I'm just gonna have to find out the nice setup and nice button for it, and I'll be making that video. Thank you guys, and I'll see you next time.